I'm Charlie Bright of Gold Derby, and today I have the distinct honor of speaking with documentary filmmaker Errol Morris about his latest film, My Psychedelic Love Story, which is currently available to view through Showtime. Uh, the first question I have to ask is, how familiar were you with Timothy Leary and Joanna Harcourt-Smith prior to working on this film?
Familiar, but not all that familiar. Familiar with Timothy Leary. I actually met him shortly before he died, but not all that familiar, and not really familiar with Joanna's story. Joanna came to me because she loved a film series that I had made for Netflix, Wormwood, which is about a CIA conspiracy. Conspiracies are all the rage these days, but this was quite probably a real CIA conspiracy. Joanna also loved a series that is still being made by my son, Hamilton Morris, for Vice, Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia. And she had hoped that both of us would be involved in some way, perhaps as co-directors, in making this story from a book that she had self-published called Tripping the Bardo with Timothy Leary, My Psychedelic Love Story. And Hamilton was very busy shooting the third season of his series. And I interviewed Joanna last December. It's a year ago now. And there was the expectation that this was going to be like Wormwood. It would be a combination of interviews and drama, a multi-part series. That changed. Guess why? It changed because of COVID-19, 2020, the worst year of my life, probably a lot of people's lives rolled around, and it no longer was possible to do the series that I originally envisioned. Showtime came back and said, will you do a single documentary? I wasn't even sure we could do it. I had this one interview, a very good interview, but one interview, which we turned into My Psychedelic Love Story. And it's a fabulous story. I am still fascinated by it. It interests me that often after I make a movie, the story stays with me as so much unfinished business, so many loose ends, unresolved elements. I've been repeatedly asked, was she really a dupe of the CIA? She tells us at the very, very beginning of the movie that she doesn't know. This is what really fascinates me. She doesn't know whether she was a CIA plant, whether she was bait to reel in Timothy Leary, who at that time was a wanted man. The full apparatus of the federal government was arrayed trying to bring him down. The Nixon administration, the CIA, the FBI, you name it. So it's a strange story because it's an internal story, not an external story. It may be my fault ultimately that we now see documentary as crime solving, because I made a crime solving film many, many, many years ago, The Thin Blue Line. And I was lucky. I was lucky to stumble on a case, and I was lucky to be able to solve the case. I was lucky to take a miscarriage of justice where an innocent man almost died in the Texas electric chair and turn it around so that he eventually was freed, and the person who committed the crime eventually was incarcerated. So there's this expectation. I think it comes from so many, many, many people. It's become part of, if you like, the documentary idiom. We describe a case and then we systematically bring in evidence to resolve it. And I've learned over the years that often the pursuit of truth, which to me is perhaps the most important human activity that I can imagine, of finding out what's out there in the world, whether we're deceived or whether we have some kind of grip on what's going on in the world. But there's another theme equally as powerful for me, and that's our failure to grab a hold of truth, even when it's sitting right in front of us. I mean, we've certainly seen a very powerful example of that. Just turn on your television set or read the newspaper any day this week, last week, you name it. The illusion of truth, the denial of truth, the failure to apprehend truth when it's right there in front of your nose. And to me, I've created a different kind of story. It's not about my pursuit of truth as much as it is about Joanna Harcourt-Smith's pursuit of truth. The feeling that she doesn't understand herself. She doesn't understand her relationship with Timothy Leary. And the story is about her quest to try to understand her own life. And for me, that's a really powerful and interesting story. One that I feel fortunate that I could tell.
So it's interesting that you bring up truth there, because so many of her stories are so incredible and are at the intersections of so many different things of history and pop culture. I'm curious as to whether you ever found yourself thinking during her interviews, there's no way this could possibly be true.
Constantly. You know, I sit there and I listen to stories. Someone once asked me, well, why do you like interviewing people? And I said, because I talk too much under normal circumstances. This gives me an opportunity to shut the fuck up and listen. Constantly. Stories that I still do not adequately understand. Did I go to the CIA? Did I go to the FBI? You betcha. I got that classic answer. I don't know who originally wrote this for the first time, but you hear it cited again and again and again. We can neither affirm or deny the existence in our files of any material relevant to Joanna Harcourt-Smith and Timothy Leary. Do I think that she was a plant as she imagines it from the get-go? I do not. But was she used after Timothy was brought back from Afghanistan? I believe she was. I think that much is pretty clear. And after they got back from Afghanistan, there is so many, many, many questions, so much moral ambiguity. The role that she played. Was she a government informant? The role that Timothy Leary himself played, was he a government informant? It's a very rich, puzzling, intricate story. And I've pioneered this so many times, it still interests me. I'm not even sure why, but it still has a powerful hold on me. The first person narrative. You know, there's thousands and thousands of films where you have 20 different people commenting on a moment in history or commenting on a character. There are very, very few films, very few outside of my own, where you have one character commenting on themselves. Fog of War would be the perfect example. A reviewer asked me, "Are you aware that you interviewed only one person for the Fog of War?" Yes, I am. You know, I made the film. Yes, I am aware that there was only one person. Am I aware that there's only one person really interviewed for my psychedelic love story, Joanna Harcourt-Smith? Yes, I'm aware, even though there's archival material, principally this tape that Leary made at Folsom Prison. It's a great story, and the story continues. I'm still writing about it. It still has its hooks in me, even though very, very sadly, Joanna died. It's hard to believe, just a couple of months ago. And I was privileged to show her the movie, the completed movie, just before she died. She watched it, I've been told by her family, 6 or 7 times the week of her death. And she loved it.
One other thing is that, you know, Joanna mentions in the film, and you brought this up earlier, that she had contacted you about this project. Yes. And I'm curious, have you ever been contacted by a potential subject hoping that you would make a film about them before?
All the time. Happens all the time. What doesn't happen all the time is that I actually not only agree to make the film, but actually go ahead, make it and finish it. That in itself is unusual. But yes, I've been contacted by people hoping that I will make a film about them.
Another thing that I wanted to ask you about is, you know, we are an awards website. You've had the experience of not only being nominated, but also winning an Oscar for The Fog of War back in 2003. And I'm just curious, what was that experience like for you? Especially, as you said in your speech, you know, it had been, the Academy had not recognized your films before. So what was it like to get the nomination and the win as well?
It's thrilling. To say anything other than that would be, I think, somewhat disingenuous. But someone asked me, why win an Oscar? And I said, well, you don't have to feel bitter about not having won an Oscar, because you have.
That's sage wisdom right there. And the other thing I was just curious about, when I was I rewatched the presentation a couple days ago, I noticed you wore sneakers to the ceremony.
Still wearing sneakers, Sperry Topsiders. Have them on right now.
Was that just a personal comfort thing? Like, I'm going to be at this thing for like 5 hours. My feet might as well be comfortable.
wasn't even a personal comfort thing. It's the shoes I wore all the time, every day. I can't quite say 24/7 because I don't wear them while I'm sleeping. But yes, it's the shoe of choice.
Um, uh, Curious about one other thing. I was talking to you before we started this about the two short films you made for the Oscar broadcast, and
Sure.
specifically the one you did for the 75th Oscars, where you were just asking all these different people, some just regular people, but then also, you know, very recognizable people like Laura Bush and Mikhail Gorbachev, and even future president of the United States, Donald Trump, was in that video, talking about what their favorite movies and what movies mean to them. How did you go about assembling all those people who participated in this opening short that you put together?
Asking them. The fact that it was for the Academy and for the Oscars probably made it a lot easier to get people than if I just been making a film for myself. It still was difficult. And the experience of having in the green room at one time, all of them sitting in the green room together, having Walter Cronkite, the opera singer Jesse Norman, Mikhail Gorbachev, Iggy Pop, and Donald Trump. That's never going to happen again. It's insane.
Well, Errol, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you all the best. And to all of our viewers, please like this video, smash that subscribe button, and don't forget to go to goldderby.com and use the Gold Derby app to make your predictions and see if you can outsmart the top prognosticators in Hollywood. Thanks so much, Errol.
Thank you so much. A pleasure.